The GOP as champions of Donald Trump's anti-democratic tactics to overturn the most secure election in our country's history is where we start this hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor and columnist for Real Clear Politics, is here. Also joining us, Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for Axios. Jonathan, this was your interview, and I want to ask you something. I have noticed that Chris Krebs, really since his first 60 Minutes interview, and especially in the interview with you, is broadening out the culpability to the GOP, who isn't just standing by idly, as I said. They are actually the reason that Trump can continue this campaign. By refusing to rebuke the attacks on the election, he feels like he's still in control of the party and can go about doing this. What did you detect from Krebs about his feelings and what really seemed to me from that interview, his disappointment in the Republican Party at large?
Yeah, it's pretty clear from spending time with him that he thinks that this is a crisis and he's trying to sound the alarm. He himself has received death threats, not just the one that you mentioned in your introduction, but he's received other death threats, but he's continuing to speak out nonetheless. Look, it's two things. Number one, what he did in this interview was he went further than he had before in describing Donald Trump as a form of domestic threat. In Krebs's words, he used the word threat, and he said that the disinformation that the president is spreading is a form of threat. But then where you really saw his frustration come out, as you said, is where he talked about the Republican leaders in Washington who are silent and are not saying anything, with a very few exceptions, and allowing this to go on. He's also kind of quite worried and maybe a little dark about the polling that we're seeing, which shows that some 70% of Republican voters out there believe that this election was stolen. So even we get through this period, you mentioned, there's deadlines coming up, et cetera. I don't think anyone at this point doubts that Joe Biden's going to be sworn into office on January 20th. The long-lasting effects of this, of so many tens of millions of Americans believing that this is a fraudulent, stolen election, I mean, it's quite profound if you play out the tape and think about that.
Well, let's do that right now, because I'm actually surprised that it's only 70% of Trump's voters who will think that Joe Biden's a fraudulent president, when the president of the United States has been saying that every single day, and no Republicans. And Washington Post called them all. 27 Republicans can acknowledge the result of the most secure election in our country's history. So let's play out the tape. Let me start by showing the sound you talked about. This is Chris Krebs talking about Trump as a threat.
One of the questions we asked, what would we do if the Russians were doing this? The oath that we pledge coming into office as a federal official is that you uphold and defend the Constitution from threats, foreign and domestic. We upheld our oath, carried it out.
So is Donald Trump a domestic threat?
There is disinformation that he is spreading. I mean, disinformation is one type of threat.
Jonathan Swan, he said the president is a threat. And if you watch any of the tape of the armed protesters outside the home of Michigan's Secretary of State while she was decorating for Christmas with her 4-year-old son, they were a threat to her safety. She thought so. What is the backstory? What are Republicans saying privately about why they don't address this threat? Because I tell you, I was in the White House after 9/11, and when the threat was clearly a foreign threat, there was nothing they wouldn't do.
Right. Well, so when I talk to Republicans, let's say in the Senate, more than the House, because they're really focused on the Georgia runoffs in January, the situation they describe is, well, yes, we think this is crazy. We don't believe that Venezuela and, China and various other people have hacked into voting machines and changed. They're perfectly willing in an off the record or on background conversation to say that they don't believe this stuff. But they're not willing to go out and say it publicly because President Trump still has an extraordinary hold over the Republican base. And so Mitch McConnell's in this situation where he needs Trump voters to turn out on January 5th in these runoffs. He can't have them stay home. And Trump has created this dynamic in the party, which is you're either with me or you're against me and with them. And so he's pitting these Republican officials against the Republican base. Look at the situation that Georgia Governor Kemp is in right now. I would love to see a poll on his approval rating among the Republican base now after President Trump's been hammering him versus, 4 weeks ago. Trump has the ability to turn the base against these politicians, and they're all petrified of it, with very, very few exceptions like Mitt Romney.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.